Okay, you're good to go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Finance Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. The time is 2 o'clock. I'm Laura McNally, Fifth Ward City Council. Going to do a roll call, if I can here, for everybody. We have Councilwoman Adamczak, Councilwoman Davis, Councilman Hughes, Valencia Morrow, Council President Patrick, Nikki Posterly, Councilman Ray, Don Turnage, Councilman Oliver, and Jennifer Ozinger. Did I miss anyone? Going once, going twice. Okay. Then after roll call here, we'll go on our agenda under item number 2. We have new business. The first item is ordinance 22-166. This is appropriating $150,000 under the ARP plan for various park improvements before summer arrival. I think at our last finance committee meeting when we talked about this, the administration had a very specific list of improvement plans that needed to be done. And one of the things council wanted to do was see that and make sure that it was in alignment with some of the larger park plans that the council persons are already have in motion, are already working on. Does Dawn or Nikki have that we could specifically look at and go through?
This is Dawn. What had came about from the ARP meeting was they were asking me to bring about a plan or a plan of action for some now items, and those now items that I have presented to that committee and brought forth was to get our parks up and running at our areas and our parks that are highly used and have a lot of traction. And that was the items that I have brought to them as far as action items that were now. And of course, these now places are only included those that are mainly have reservations that reach capacity to be full. And also in places where we have events that have happened for the summertime that currently now, which summer has now, our summer events have now started. So I do have a list with me of those I can, read off again. I have provided a few months back as to what they were.
Yeah, we had asked for them after our last finance committee meeting, but hadn't gotten them. So that's what we want to see.
Okay, I had turned that in a while ago when I turned in the ARP meeting. So
council doesn't get that stuff. We're not on the ARP meetings.
I understand all of that, but I had submitted it.
Through the chair, Dawn, there was a list that I read off that I gave back to you. That's the list that they're saying, the $150,000 that were needed, that were requested by the committee to get the parks running for the season. That's the list. Do you have it where we can do a share screen? That's the list that they wanted to look at.
No, I don't have a share screen. I don't have that. I do have I have the list in which I had submitted. It was even by email along with the plan that we had, the data analysis plan. It was all part of that, and that I submitted to.
If any of us have, through the chair, I mean, if anyone has it, we could share it if somebody has it in the email or whatever.
Who did you submit it to, Dawn? You keep saying you submitted it to who?
I submitted it to council. So that would have been, I want to say Valencia's email address, or maybe even Jennifer's, and then some of it was even printed, a hard copy was printed off too.
We were provided the analysis done by YSU. That is not what we're talking about right now. At our last finance committee meeting, Nikki said that you presented a detailed itemized list with numbers next to it that totaled up to $150,000 that did things like replace a broken slide. You know,
Right, there was an action plan, there were current action plan items. Nikki, would you still have that email I had submitted then?
Nikki, you're muted.
The chair, sorry. It wasn't an email. It was a document that you gave me at the meeting right before you left. And I read off of the same document that I turned back to you, that council is in need of, that we spoke
Okay.
about.
Okay,
For the $150,000 request.
right, I have that. And as I said, I brought that with me, and then I even emailed, even as a follow-up, was there anything else? So I don't have it written down as far as Pat providing it to anyone at this moment. Other than what I've already submitted.
Okay, that's all we want to look at because that's directly related to the $150,000. So if we don't have that available to look at, then we'll have to just keep that in finance for right now and move to the next agenda item. That's what we're basing our questions off of and why we couldn't really discuss it any further at the last one. So can you guys get us that before our next finance committee meeting and then we can take that up? Anita?
To the chair, I don't know, Mike, do you have a copy? Because I had a copy, but it's kind of wetted, kind of got soaked. It was that little, she brought it to us at an ARP meeting, if that's the one. And it had a picture of the sliding board with a piece of wood in it and things like that. But that was never emailed to council. That was provided to.
Yeah, I can look through the chair. I can look in my binder and see if I have, let me pull out my file. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, thanks,
We'll
Mike. But through the chair,
Anita?
yes, but if Mike can't find his, Don, you would have the original, so could you then scan it in and then email it to Valencia?
And
You're muted.
Mike, it looks like you're holding something up.
Yeah, is it just this one that says healthy green spaces, safe and sound building infrastructure? This seemed like the overall one though, not the park readiness one.
Through the chair?
Anita?
Yeah, Mike, it was an actual, it was like several pages and it was handed to us at the meeting and it had actual pictures that Don literally had taken a picture of this morning. But you also had the pictures, Don, that you said you had taken that morning.
right,
Yeah, all of that. And I think Mike does have part of it, that email, Mike, you're right.
I can scan this right now. It does have a few notes on there. If you guys didn't mind having that on there too, if that's okay, that it has nothing.
Yeah, I don't care. They're your notes. So whether you want us to see them is up to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Just don't judge me on some of the misspellings on the notes. That's it. Be right back.
Okay. I'd say we can move to the next item and come back to this one, but we want Dawn as part of that conversation too. So we will just, should we take a 5-minute recess to get the materials? Would that be the best appropriate thing to do? Yeah. Can I have a motion for that?
I make a motion to take a 5-minute recess so we can get our
Second.
documents emailed to us.
Second. Okay, we're gonna go on a 5-minute recess so Dawn can get those files up to Valencia and then out to us. Thank you. That is 2:12.
Thank you. Council, this is V. I have forwarded what Dawn sent to me, and it is now 2:18.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to open it before I restarted this meeting, but we can restart the meeting, call the meeting back to order. And bear with me while I open it and pull it up. Somebody else might be faster than me.
Do you want someone else to share it, Lauren? So you do, can you do both? It's when you're chairing a meeting, it's hard to.
Oh, that would be actually fantastic, Mike. Also, when I try to open multiple programs, my video kind of stops. Do you have it open, Mike? I know you've shared before. Or Basha, I know you've shared before.
I have an wait, did I get the right thing? Hold on a second. No, here we go. Current action items. Okay. I'm not sure if it'll let me share or not. Oh, there we go. Share screen, document, share. Can everyone see that?
It's loading. Yep. Okay. So and I think we can scroll down to the park specific probably. So I think one of the concerns that we brought up at the last meeting over this piece was that some of these parks have bigger plans already in motion, and we don't want to waste some of this $150,000 on removing, for instance, a slide when our bigger plan already has money allocated to remove the entire playground structure. And so that's what we want to make sure is happening here, and that we're all just on the same page from a communication standpoint, so that we're not being redundant or duplicating anything or putting a Band-Aid on something that we're already spending money on in a couple months from now to do something else with. So I don't know how this is kind of organized, Mike, but maybe if you can scroll down just for me, and I could see if we can pick a spot to start.
Sure. Is this a good spot, or do you want to go from the top, or?
So are these, I'm assuming these parks listed at the top, Wick, Crandall, Glenwood, are all the parks identified in this $150,000 that needs work? Is that true, Dawn?
Yes, through the chair, like I said, these are all the parks that were identified that have the most traction as we speak, and anything that would be adjusted or fixed or revamped would be part of a larger plan, a larger vision for those areas. At this time, as of today, I'm not aware of any actual plans that are actively going forward and have started. So this would be a great point too, whereas with that long-term planning and documenting that is provided with those long-term plan, these fixers would be able to identify what has been rebuilt and coincide with the longer term plan. But these particular areas are the ones that are identified here, are the locations that make up the majority of the high traction areas during this time of year.
Okay. So, well, I mean, you know about mine at Kirkmere. So you know about my longer term plan. I see you just have that handwritten up here.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't necessarily want any money spent to Band-Aid that now when we have a longer term plan to replace everything in there.
Right, through the chair, if I may, sorry, like for Kirkmere, for example, they do, that particular area does need more trash cans. And if we were to go ahead and replace them, the goal was to then replace them with a biodegradable one that also is a recyclable bin. So when it comes to the action items now, there was nothing identified at Kirkmere, for example, that was of a large scale. What I simply was providing was spaces and locations that may need more park benches for right now because of the active use of them, or more trash cans. Some of the larger areas that are identified, such as Lincoln Park, in which that's a place where our pavilions have been destroyed from nature, the tree that fell on it. So not all of the areas that were listed, again, if I may just read it one time, had a huge plan as far as a redevelopment. It may have been that there are items there that do need to be replaced in order to improve what is going on there, because the quality of life there has increased as people utilizing those spaces.
Okay, so if I ask this to council, what we're seeing right now on the screen, if the parks are in your ward and what you see on the screen right now, do you need it? Is it true? Is it part of something you're already working on that maybe Dawn doesn't know about? And then we'll scroll down, just keep scrolling down. So maybe stay on the first one, Mike.
Sorry, I forgot I was providing the screen for everyone.
Yep, that's you. So anything under the pavilions, it looks like is the first item here that council has questions or concerns about spending money to replace these pavilions. Basha.
Thank you through the chair. I do have a couple questions. I was hearing that we are talking about both, like this would be like a short-term fix, but there's larger comprehensive plans. My question would be, do we have those plans? Personally, in my ward, I have been working on redoing the parks and have been meeting with vendors and contractors to kind of try to gauge pricing, what it would cost to rebuild or redo or fix the parks. But my second question is, if we would not have the ARP funding, what would have been the plan to bring the parks up to be able to be open for the summer? So I guess my first question is there a long-term comprehensive plan for the parks other than this one? And then what would the plan be otherwise?
Okay, no, there is no long-term comprehensive plan. Through the chair, I do apologize. There's no long-term comprehensive plan currently. That was one of the other items. I believe it may be on number 2 of our agenda today. However, what we have been doing is utilizing the data analysis that we received as a footprint from YSU and identifying those parks locations that we can actively make improvements on based on the budget that currently the Parks Department has in front of them. If we did not have this, for the second part of your question, if we did not have this, we would continue to do what we have been doing and removing those things that are not fixable, and unfortunately having to board them up or just remove completely. And then going about using items such as old trash cans and just kind of circling them out and taking some from other places that aren't used, kind of just putting Band-Aids on it, which has been going on even longer than I've been here. So have an opportunity to take advantage of assessing our current and future recreation needs for our community. Having a master plan is something that definitely would help us in the rehabilitation projects or even processes when we facilitate something in regards to new services or new plans or even smaller plans such as the one that would coincide with our Action Now items.
Okay. any other questions or about these? Maybe just what we're looking at right now. Are there, does any of the council members have long-term plans for these 3 parks, Lincoln, Johnson, Homestead?
Can you hear me?
Jimmy, yes.
Yes, my screen is, mic got it jacked up. I can't tell anything. When you have Johnson Park at that 1 times 17, what does that mean?
Sorry,
I-
one time
I
again?
think that's the size of the structure.
You said,
Dawn,
you're talking about the structure side, the 17 by 17?
Oh, on my screen, it says 1 by 17.
Oh, sorry, but no, it's 17 by 17 and 15 by 17. That was the
Yeah.
size of the open pavilion.
Yeah, that's Homestead. I was talking about Johnson Park above it. It says 1 by 17.
We may
I
have
think
just,
it's-
it should be 11. It should be 17 by 17.
Okay, now I mean, I've had the Maranatha Park, I call it, the Lincoln Nose Park.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's on my radar to add shade there and some kind of sprinkler system or something there as well too. But that's, you know, that's what I'm looking at. You don't have it. Did they do any studies on that or any additional?
No. Through the chair and answer your question, if I may, again, this was a action item now. No, that definitely, Maranatha, for example, is a great example of the long-term plan. Right now, that area did not have any action items now, meaning that the foot traffic that is there, nothing identified as far as being needed to be replaced or removed or repurposed was not part of the current plan. However, that definitely, I do believe if we were to in order to incorporate a long-term plan, that would be an additional park improvement. That is definitely something that would be in the conceptual layout for a future guide of growth and development at that park.
yeah, so this is just to fix, these already exist. What we'll talk about next is what we want to add, I think, in the next agenda item. Mike?
Yeah, through the chair and like what I think Jimmy's saying is things that are needed. And when we went through this list, I think that's just how it was brokered. And Anita can concur or let me know if my memory's incorrect. That Dawn, wanted a big ask, and the committee negotiated and said, okay, what do you need just to open to get the parks going? And this was the list, and they said, okay, we believe 150 is reasonable. Because, I know I don't have anything on this list really, and I have projects I want to do. So, I mean, that was just to get the ball rolling. This is the stuff she had in the queue, but it's not, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and I understand that. I think I just want to make sure that what's on this list isn't part of what I'm already planning, or Anita's already planning, or Bosch is already planning in a bigger way, because maybe we didn't communicate that. Or so that's why I kind of wanted to just work through this and make sure that, okay, Lincoln Park has a broken pavilion. There's no plans to completely gut and restructure Lincoln Park, right? So we want to keep the pavilion and we want to keep it where it's at. So we're going to repair that pavilion. Okay, good. Johnson Park, ask ourselves the same thing. Good. Homestead. Well, I think that's Basha. Do you plan on, was any part of your plan to tear down the current pavilion and replace it somewhere else, or not have one at all? If not,
Yes,
then we'll repair it and move on. Basha?
well, I guess my question is, so if we don't support this legislation, are the parks just not going to open, the ones that are affected by this list? Like, how would we, like, what is the plan to proceed forward?
Through the chair, no. Well, yeah, no, I could not. Like Lincoln Park, I would not be able to open that particular area for rental because that pavilion is what is considered is a hazard. So I wouldn't be able. So there are some that no, I wouldn't be able to open it to full capacity for the usage of a rental that we normally would do this time of year. Yes, they can open. However, the structural damage or the structural repair, as long as it's not of a safety hazard, would continue to sit as such, and we would do as we could as we continue to go through our analysis as what we can and cannot do based on our budget. And if I may ask at this time, though, the plans that are being that council is, talking to individuals about, if I could please just ask that I be a part of those, because to know what is going on, it would be also important as to some of the things that we try to do on a daily basis when making decisions, both short-term and long-term.
Okay, Mike, can you scroll a little bit for me? Okay.
So
Okay, Mike.
through the chair. So I think so just this stuff wouldn't be done and those services wouldn't be available if not for ARP money. I think that's what Basha was asking, right? I mean, stuff just wouldn't be happening. Parks would be chained up, locked up, and no pavilion rentals is basically what we should be understanding. Is that correct?
I'm not saying everything be chained up and locked up, except for Lincoln Park because of the major repairs that need to be done there. However, we, like every other department, asked to provide, what that list looks like as far as to have opportunity to and make improvements is what I've added. For example, even with the other parks that are still actively working and actually going on, like our golf course. Yes, these would be some things that have always been on our list that we've taken off and identified as far as what is a now and what can possibly wait. But if we had an opportunity to make those improvements and show that future growth that we wanted to do can actually be something that can be developed now, would speak volume not only to increasing our foot traffic, but also to the beautification of our areas that I know that we all have been trying so hard to do and scramble as what to do. We've been without, for example, bunker sand for quite some time, but what we've done was spread here and there what we could, or what individuals, the areas that we could fix and not fix. So nothing is actually chained up except for Lincoln because and only because of the disparities of that particular pavilion. The rest of them are bordered. Some of them have been removed when it comes to some of these swings or some of these slides that have not been replaced in over 20 plus years at some locations. Maranatha is one of our most recent parks in the last 3 years that is actively being used, but also is the most one with the most recent equipment there.
To the chair.
Jimmy?
I get that, but I think Maranatha was incomplete in the beginning. I know it's one of the most recent one, but they have no shade, they have no water service, they have no bathroom, they don't even have no parking really. But I don't think it was a lot more is needed, and even the outskirts landscape, and there's property around it that should have been taken or bought or absorbed with the park, would have made it ideal for everything that we're talking about. It's just not complete, and can't use the bathroom because there are no bathrooms, there's no water service, there's no shade. They got you got on time activities, basketball court and whatnot, but if you're going to have a family reunion, the gathering there, it's just not going to fit, and I'm not thinking that was his intent, and maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I think it's incomplete and there's much more needed to be there before you call it open up. And the same thing with Nick Johnson. and God knows Lincoln, or do we have plans for Lincoln? And where do I see that at?
Through the chair, if I may, well, Councilman, my whole purpose of first using Mayor Nassar as an example at the end of my the statement that I was sharing was simply because given a comparison as to parks being locked up, and that, you know, that particular one is a most recent active park as to why it's not on a current action plan. And most of our parks do not have the most recent activity as far as new equipment there as that one. So it's simply definitely what was built on based on the grant that was received and amount that we could have afforded to allocate that grant at the time. It definitely needs additional improvements to that. Actually would be additions to it that would even make that more of an attractive place, and a quality of life increase there, as well as recreational services. Now, in reference to Lincoln, we were actively renting that, and it is in conditions to be rented as we speak today. But the pavilion, is not. It would not be one that is of a safety for individuals to be there and think that they're not going to go over to that area where that pavilion needs to be replaced. So therefore, the decision to not rent there would be one that would be of a best option at this time.
So, to separate the two things, one is that Jimmy's talking about. One is stuff we need to add to the parks to just make it be a park, and what are those identifying factors? And that's something we talked about, I think, in our last meeting around this, and we can talk about in the next agenda item. For this one, for this agenda item, it's what's already there that we definitely want to fix, because we're not doing anything else with it in terms of a long-term plan. For instance, the Lincoln Park Pavilion, it's not part of a long-term plan to tear it down and move it to another location on the property. It's any type of long-term plan we do with Lincoln Park will include keeping that pavilion right where it is, so let's repair it. Does that make sense? That's how I'm looking at this thing I'm looking at right now.
Through the chair.
Julius?
So I was just wondering, thank you. Are there the same short-term plans for Falls Playground? Because I didn't hear it come up in the conversation.
So let's keep scrolling, Mike.
Or
So
would that be on the next agenda item?
well, Falls Playground might be further down. So I think she identified, you know, just the pavilions right there. Then she identified the golf course. Okay, it needs these things. Like, that's nobody's necessary park. Then as you, okay, the equipment and surface repair of playgrounds for IPE and Crandall. I mean, Samantha's not on here for Crandall. So maybe a one-on-one conversation with her to make sure whatever playground equipment and surface repairs you're doing isn't part of something she already has planned for Crandall, Dawn. And that's, you know, as you stated earlier, we need to communicate better with you on the plans that we have in place. But IPE, I'm not sure whose park that is and if they already have plans for that. Basha?
That's IPE's Kids World. Yes, I have a bigger plan for that park.
Okay, so maybe we don't need to spend the $4,000 here right now, because you have plans to repair the playgrounds already as part of a bigger budget. Okay, so that's something that could come off of here. So then keep scrolling, Mike.
To the chair, you won't, if I may, if you won't see Falls on there, simply again, these were all the parks that are identified as high traction areas that are rental locations, or the usage of them are the higher traction. So Falls was not on here as a action now item. However, it is needed for a long-term plan, in which also is part of the data analysis. Like you stated, would be probably under the next portion of our meeting. So And these were locations that people are, our community, our visitors are currently actively utilizing. Ice, that rubber material, we have been cited on that several times as far as warnings. We have patched it the best that we could, and then that wears out from weather or even just from walking. We remove things that could no longer be repaired from us attempting to put it together ourselves, utilizing other parts that from other locations. So to wait on that would be great to see what that plan is going to look like, because that rubber continues to be in bad shape. And we most recently, patched again what we could. But it does need a full replacement of some sort, or actually repair of what the current surface that is there.
Through the chair.
Nikki?
I just, for the sake of the ARP committee, what we, just for a little more clarity in, as we're discussing what we may want to remove because it's part of the longer term plan, but what the committee had asked Dawn to present is, again, what's needed to open the parks now that are in use seasonally while working on a longer term plan. So some of these are safety issues that we do need to address while working on a long-term plan. So it is a Band-Aid. However, we understand that the long-term plan won't even be able to be implemented this summer, this season, just because of planning purposes and because of implementation purposes. We're already in June, and in, a couple of months, summer will be over. I don't know how far into a long-term plan will be while these parks are actively being used. We don't want safety to be an issue if there's some things we can fix now while working on that long-term plan without waste. We don't want to waste money either. But some of these things are safety issues that I just want us to keep in mind need addressed.
So
sorry.
specifically for IPE, let's just use that one as an example. If it's I don't know what the $4,000 is, replace of surface playground. If Bosch's long-term plan, though, is part of it is to actually tear that whole thing out and move it somewhere else, or not have that particular there, wouldn't it be better to know that now and spend the $2,000 that it costs to tear it all out and just leave it as plain grass field or whatever until it's time for her implementation of whatever she's putting in next?
Through the chair, on that particular one, as it states here, it says surface repair. This is not even to replace it all. It's to repair the rubber surface there because of the safety of that surface. Yes, it is still being utilized. Yes, we still go over there and we continue to patch it. But if we could repair that, it could last us at least through another summer, even going forward, until not knowing when the ground would break for something that would be new.
Okay, so I think maybe determining on that one in particular, Basha and Dawn could talk and see which one makes the most sense to do based on whatever the plan is.
To the
And-
chair?
Oh, yes, Anita.
Yeah. Don, I
Yeah.
see here for the golf course that you have a $3,000 request to repair the cart path on hole number 4,
Yes.
the dog leg. That's the dog leg. So what would be the cart path that you're repairing? Because there's I know that course, there is no real cart path except literally right next to the hole itself. So you're talking about just that?
No, because you can't see it. It has an overgrowth on there. We haven't been utilizing that, and we have removed some of the growth during the season. But no, that is a cart path that would assist us in making a better path, for the cart set over in that area. That particular cart path has been closed down for some time because of the overgrowth that is on there.
But there is no actual cart path. It's a parking thing next to the course.
it
the whole.
was a cart path. It was a cart path. I mean, I can provide photos at a later date for that, but that has not been utilized. However, based on if we could utilize that, it would assist us in the services that we are providing.
I'd like to see those photographs that you have of the cart path. That was a real cart path, because I've been playing there since '99, and it's never been anything really viable there. I just out of curiosity, it's like, what's it gonna look like for $3,000? No, most cart paths would cost either a lot more or you don't have one. So if you could just give me the pictures, thank you.
Sasha?
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yes, I saw your hand
Oh,
up earlier.
okay, thank you. So I have a few, I guess they're more so comments. It sounds as though two things are happening, right? We received the data analysis from YSU that will help us dictate what is needed and for a long-term plan. Whilst that is happening, from the sounds of it, since so much of our parks equipment is not maintained, I feel at some point we need to either consolidate and additionally put parks where they're needed. As example, Councilman Davis needs a park in her ward. We've had this data from YSU for a while. So is there a plan or ideas of where to put the investment and how to either, consolidate or build out the parks?
Through the chair, yes, the analysis that they gave us provided us recommendation as well as a tool recommending a long-term plan that not only included a master plan for a parks plan, but also for safety and also for maintenance too. Most of the plan that they provided us, the information that they gathered was based on what our census has informed us, as well as anything that they done when they did their actual visual walking of the areas. What that analysis does not include, which would be included in a larger long-term plan of a master's park plan, would include our community involvement, our stakeholders, any master plan that connecting our buildings and other departments and our surrounding areas when it comes to environmental. So that data analysis, while it is a great tool, it simply is just that, a tool that we can utilize to provide us analysis as to what has been assessed without including other identifying factors when it comes to economic development, quality of life, recreation services, safety, because as we all know, that is a more complex issue and a complex concern that includes our parks, but also includes other entities. So we can use that simply as almost like a cheat sheet per se for a longer documented plan.
Through the chair.
Anita?
Through the chair to Dawn on that, the analysis and whatnot, which was just done in December.
Yes.
And utilizing that analysis, why would we not be able to, with you as the park director, come up with a viable plan rather than spending $250,000 for another study or anything like that, which is what they're talking about.
Right.
Could we not use it? Could we
I'm
use
sorry.
it?
Through the chair, yeah. Well, that analysis did not include, that's a proactive analysis, of course, and it's projected what recreation trends are. However, it is not, it's a basics general. It is not actually giving us an overall master plan of how we can include the use of economic development, housing, quality of life when it comes to new parks or new programs, or connecting us with anything that in relation to the health and wellness of the entire infrastructure of our community. There was no public input, for example, on that dollar analysis. It was based on helping us what we can do now. And it got us to the point, honestly, to whereas we're able to pull off the items from that analysis that support what our park usage is and what areas are more active than others. Another example, it helped us pull the data as to where our communities have changed when it came to the amount of individuals residing in a certain area or another, and strategically told us too what some of our maintenance issues and challenges have been, because we did not have a maintenance plan in place, allow us to say, you know, we need to focus more on the a maintenance plan of those areas that we provide daily services to for summer camp. And I'm just using that as an example in this facilitative talk. But it does not establish a long range vision for our parks when it comes to implementing a strategy for an overall systems plan that does go beyond parks, because with the complexity of that, no single action item can be done in reference to a data analysis, analyzing what the current problem is.
To the chair.
Oh, was that you, Anita?
Yeah, it's just to you. Is the $250,000 up on the next item?
It is. And I was actually
Okay.
going to say,
All right.
it
I'll
sounds
wait
like,
then. Thank you.
well, it sounds like we really want to talk about that, and maybe we should shift. Maybe we should have put that as the first action item on this agenda. And let's go talk about that first and come back to this ordinance, and maybe we'll be able to better talk about this ordinance. Is that okay with the committee if we shift down to the second agenda item and talk through ordinance 22-167, which is the $250,000 for a park plan? Is the committee okay with that?
I'm agreeable.
Okay, so Mike, will you take this off your screen?
Okay.
And then, thank you. And then let's open this up for the second part here, the $250,000 to create a plan. Now we know we have Basha, I see your hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So when we first received this ordinance, I was trying to, in a sense, brainstorm to see how we can save from spending another $250,000 on a plan. So taking the data analysis we received from the university and knowing what the unique needs are of the community, and taking trying to be equitable, taking that under account, as well as understanding the needs, like Dawn mentioned, about certain properties needing more extensive or comprehensive plans and work. I created kind of an overview of how I would recommend that we proceed forward with the parks. And if I could maybe email that. I don't know if Mike is willing to share his screen again, and I could email to show everyone kind of what I was considering. I think one of the important things, as John mentioned, is, making sure that our parks are safe, and there needs to be equity. So what constitutes, I hear frequently Councilman Davis speaking that there's a difference between a playground and a park. And taking that one step further, so I think there's playgrounds, there's parks, another green space, and then we have our sporting complexes throughout the city. And I think we can kind of tackle those by category, and having the data from the university, knowing where the greatest need is for each based on demographics, we can come up with an outline and a blueprint and work from there. Mike, are you able to share that on your screen?
Yeah, that was the Word document that you sent me?
Yes.
Okay, give me 1 second. I think I have it here.
and as you're pulling it up, so say even for example, with playgrounds, there's a list of what items are would constitute in a standard playground in the city of Youngstown. Anything above and beyond, that scope would be something that the council person would then be responsible for and could use their $2 million. And from the surveys that we did, it seems as though we should be putting about 9.4 million into the parks, 2.4 million of that for general playground upgrades, the significant park improvements, 5.5 million, and sports field consolidation, 1.5. And then at the end, including the recommendation of closure of some of our properties that they could either go back to nature or be donated because they're either not used or we're not able to upkeep them and do not need that overabundance of empty fields in our, in our parks inventory.
I think this is exactly what we kind of talked about
Right.
at our last finance meeting when we discussed the parks and allocating money and kind of coming up, what does a park look like? And we talked about how much to allocate in general.
So just to, even mention, I can forward this to everybody, but as Mike is, I guess, going through it as an example, we know Councilwoman Davis does not have a park.
1 second.
Sure.
Jen or Valencia, can you let Nikki back into the meeting? She's in the waiting room.
Is she still in?
Okay, I am letting her in. I did let her in before. I don't know what happened. Hold on.
Oh yeah, she had to get back on. She got kicked off and had to get back on. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Bosh.
Thank you. So say even for example, so the first part, as I mentioned, for the general playground upgrades, an average of $200,000 per playground. Some playgrounds would need more, or some would need less, depending on their needs. But to have a standardized, those are the items that are at our playgrounds. So it would be equal and equitable throughout the city. In the second portion regarding the significant park improvements, as Dawn mentioned that, McKelvey Lake or Lincoln Park would need more substantial improvements. And that's why there's, it's not set in stone arbitrary, but $1 million. And then that, if it is deemed that we need to then have experts, that, know about nature or lakes, well, then out of that money that's already designated for that, then the study could be done from those funds as well. For example, Councilman Davis, she does not have a park in the 6th Ward. So there's $500,000 put aside for her to have parks. That should not be coming out of her $2 million, but a comprehensive plan. And the same thing, other facilities. By this plan, the golf course is getting $1 million. Northside Pool is getting $500,000. Boards Field has been on the west side, has been empty for years. It is in need of a lot of things there. If you look at the data analysis, that is actually the most densely populated area out of the whole city, that ranks #1. So that needs a significant investment. Again, should not be coming out of Councilman Ray's $2 million. And then moving on to the third one, the sports field consolidation. We have a lot of really great fields and sports throughout the city, but they too can be consolidated because they're not all used. As an example, even I believe it was last year, that maybe the year previous, a certain football team was used to playing at a certain field because that's just what they were used to. However, when we gave them the opportunity to use a different field that had better amenities, they were willing to move there. So some of these fields we can give back to nature or close or give them to economic development. But I think this is kind of a good blueprint to work from, and it makes it equitable and gives a vision, and then allows the individual council people to know what money they need to use if they want anything above and beyond what would be outside of this standardized scope of work.
Mike?
Through the chair, if I might, thank you, Councilman Adamczak, for preparing this. I think it's a great you kind of just listen to what we've all talked about and, you know, put it to fruition. And I think we did. That was one thing we talked about in the, definitely in the ARPA meeting, was a standard and what's the standard look like, so everyone can get there, and then we'll talk about extras. So I you know, appreciate that. Thank you.
Dawn?
Through the chair. Yeah, this is a great document. And one of the things that I do recall, and I know not all of us are, you know, in those meetings, but my experience that and the appreciation I have from the meeting that I had with the ARP meeting was, with all of this, where would we start? And it would not, do we start, at what location do we start this, you know, and which one is deemed to be more important than the other? And which, if we had a master plan, not only does it provide us a documentation that will last, you know, for a long term, if you could allow me an opportunity just to share at least 10 things that a parks master plan would do if we were to implement that was beyond what we internally do, because I could see to whereas that could become a challenge, trying to put what park should go first, or what ward should go second, or, you know, and trying, whereas a long-term documented process would develop, first thing would develop would be a phasing implementation schedule, and identify what prioritized as what action needs to go first. You know, this access then would currently further activity as far as what recreation is needed. It would also establish a long-range vision, and that vision would actually be a plan recommendation given to us from a planning period to a system-wide planning to ensure effectiveness all over, from existing facilities to what we need to be done new. Thirdly, it would help us prioritize a budget for any additional capital improvement plans that may be needed, and we can use that based on demographic changes that would come out of that plan, as well as even other municipalities that we could probably, you know, coincide with. And again, that is just an example of a strong impact, aligning ourselves up with other properties and investments that could come forward that are laying outside of our municipality area. It could provide us with the strategies to fill the gap, to reduce redundancies within our parks, maybe even have equitable access, and some particular parks would fit better and have a theme at this area. Analyzing what that would actually look like and understanding where those existing gaps happen. Maybe there'd be some overlaps, for example, to whereas there's not as many 5-year-old children on this side of town versus the other. A master plan would help us produce a community of support, not only with the public engaged in that, but also would generate funding and support from outside of our community, and people want to possibly even provide valuable access and put namesakes on some of our parks. If we are meeting the diverse needs of our community through having them involved in creating a master plan, that also will help us in the transparency as to us building it together for one, and then building that trust with our community. It also, a master plan helps us plan and promote ideas for partnership. Again, that just goes back to a deepen collaborative effort that includes our community and build from there, which I do believe they want to be a part of. They just have not been asked to do so. Establish a strong foundation in which some of our grants that we do apply for, one of the main things that they do ask for that puts you kind of up higher in the observation is, do you have a master plan? And some of them are even required now, especially with all of the changes that have come through with COVID and people making changes to their green spaces. A comprehensive master plan is starting to be in the requirements for some of the grants areas. And then we also can align with some of our community needs when it comes to that proactive data analysis that we already have. And we can align that basis, providing individual or company or organization that we select to do our master plan. This is what we have so far. We've done our proactive analysis piece on it. How can we take this and grow from there? And where can we start? When it comes to our health benefits, when it comes to connecting our parks to nature, when it comes to social equity, when it comes to access and benefits for all. And then when it comes to safety, when it comes to knowing what the required actions are and what safety precautions we need to take place, but involve our citizens in that process, would all be part of what our master plan would all include. And having this, even this documentation that Councilwoman Adamsack has provided would also be an additional support that, whereas maybe our plan wouldn't even cost as much as the 250 million. That's just the average cost from the research that I have done and have seen, because we would be able to provide a lot of documentation and to give a fresh start as to where to start and where to go. Thank you for your time.
Through the chair.
Julius?
Thank you. Through the chair. Don, it sounds like everything you listed is something that we're capable of doing within the city. Just as I was listening to you, it's not like we don't have access to the data that's needed. We do. It's not like we don't have the ability to engage the community, which I think would even, coming from us, would even be more beneficial from the community to see that this administration, this city council actually has a plan. So I just judging off how you laid out the master plan, it sounds to me like it's something we can accomplish within the Parks Department and utilizing other departments in the city and some of our city partners without going out and getting a master plan. That's just my opinion.
Sure. Through the chair. Yes, you're right, your councilman. We've been doing that. I'm sorry. Did you say go ahead?
Yeah, Basha had her hand up too.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, no, I know it's hard to see with the share screen. But go ahead, John, if you wanted to reply directly to Julius and then Basha.
Oh, yes, sir. I was saying, sir, yeah, you're right. We have been doing that. However, we have been doing it to a minimum level just based on us not being able to provide something that is of a larger quality, a larger tangible. We've been doing it to provide we've been having meetings, for example, we've had one regarding the Kirkmere Park and what those plans have been. However, if we had a full comprehensive plan, it would not only include the Parks Department, but it would also include those departments that would be able to assist in the benefits of providing a plan that would be of safety throughout our own park as far as recreation and involvement of economic development through our parks and improving the quality of life at a higher scale. And most master plans, we want to be included in that. So they would definitely have us included. We would definitely be at the table. They would just be doing the footwork and legwork, in which, well, I can't do it by myself. And my department of 3 people wouldn't be able to effectively write out what the results of that plan are. We just could not do. In other departments, while they do assist, they also, just from experience, don't, and which is something we see every day, we don't have enough people to assist in that complete process of developing a plan that is very effective and would have the existing development factors to it that would be of a higher measure. But thank you.
Basha?
Thank you. A couple things I was going to mention. I agree with Julius. I think we could do a lot of these things in-house. Just listening to the things that were mentioned, like in terms of even implementation, how we would be able to, implement and then choose what, takes priority over what. It sounds as though, especially because these are ARP funds, not general, out of our general fund. If, as an example, if Councilwoman McNally and Councilwoman Davis and Councilman Ray and, all of us already started working towards redoing some of our parks with the ward specific ARP funding, we can still continue working with those individuals. So we can still simultaneously do several projects. And we have the data from the university that shows us if there then thereafter has to be priority of what needs to be done. Similarly to the list that you provided us of the action items of what places need to be fixed first, you stated that you base those on the need and usage. So in a sense, we already have that. So I don't think spending $250,000 on a comprehensive plan is the right way to go when we have a plan. Do I think that maybe we'll need additional help on some of these larger projects that would be the significant park improvements, with the nature parks that we have, with some of the facilities, that we have, or parks that need, a brand new park build, perhaps, but the other playgrounds that we have, they're pretty standard. But even now, as I was working on specifically right now on Lynn Park and Ipes, even for example, with the playground equipment and swing set, the playground equipment that we're considering is based on the needs of that neighborhood and what the residents are wanting. So we as council people, as Councilman Oliver mentioned, already have that community engagement. So I just feel it's not advantageous to spend that kind of funding on a plan when we have a plan. The Parks Department, the city, we know the needs of our residents. As council people, we know what our residents have been asking for. That's why, again, as an example, Councilman Davis knows where the park should be and what she needs. Councilman McNally knows what's needed at Kirkmere. Councilman Ray knows what's needed on, at Boards. Jimmy knows what his residents want on the east side. I don't think we need a plan. I think this is a good blueprint, and we should build from there and plan on execution, because I frankly am prepared to start on my park now. My first park was going to be done before the end of summer, so I would not have to wait until next season for it to open.
Anita?
Through the chair, first off, concurring with both Julius and Basha, and Lauren, we talked as well about the things that we know need to be in our parks, addressing everything that Basha has here listed. And I mean not to denigrate anyone or anything like that, but $250,000 for a plan is something that City Council first off needs to address and see what we could do on our part. So many of us have been having these meetings. I mean, Lauren, I know you've had almost as many as I have. I've had 4 meetings about the parks, 4 meetings already. Engaging, doing just like we said, engaging the community and finding out what they want. Surveys. We've had surveys out there, and we've gotten the feedback from these surveys. Lauren, you've had your survey up. I had my survey up. Bosh, I don't know, and the other guys, folks, I don't know if you had surveys or not, but we have these things that are listed. And I think it's incumbent upon us, before we lay out $250,000, for us to do our part with the park director to try to focus this. I'm sorry. Excuse me for one. I do apologize. My dog is competing with me.
Through the chair.
So
go ahead, Anita.
I'm sorry, but I think we should have our own meeting of the whole to discuss those common things that we know need to be in every playground that we put up. And then we need to watch these dollars. $250,000. We spent $25,000 and $50,000 to do a citywide finance plan. Excuse me. And here we are talking about spending 4 times that amount. Okay, I'm gonna shut up because my dog won't let me talk.
Through the chair, while Anita's getting her dog under control.
Oh, go ahead, Julius.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna give an example. Like, part of the reason I agree totally with both Basha and Anita. And my issue would be for the little playground that needs to been redone years ago in the First Ward, Falls Playground. There's already a plan for it. There's already architectural renderings for it. There's already a price attached to it. It's been ready to go for years. So it would be absolutely redundant to even, put together a $250,000 plan for things like my colleagues have said. We're already prepared to move on. I think we can make decisions as council people in our wards about what priorities we've gotten along and been able to make decisions well. So I think we can make those decisions on what priorities need to be placed where, amongst ourselves without having to go out and pay for a $250,000 plan. And my other question to Don would be, I'm not an expert on parks. You would be the expert on parks, Don. So in other cities I can hear part of the answer or in other cities, they have bigger departments, they have people to do this, this, and that. But in other cities, is it the case that the park director would be the one putting together the master plan for the city's parks? Or does everybody go out and hire an outside agency? And I say that because like we've been doing a lot of stuff outside when it comes to the city. And for something like this that I think everybody has a pretty good understanding of, I don't necessarily think we need to go outside and hire somebody to do it. When we have, I think, in my opinion, a perfectly capable parks director. So is that something like if you were able to work with like interns or whatever, because I've seen EAG in their infancy stage do total plans across the entire city as interns. So is that something you would be able to utilize working together with organizations we already deal with? And if you had the manpower unto yourself with your park expertise, given where you come from and everything, would you be able or capable of putting together a master plan within your department?
Dawn,
Thank you. I've been trying to put the hand down. I don't know how to do that. So sorry that it's still like up there. But thank you. Yes, Councilman Oliver, that is a great analogy and a great question. For one example, yes, a lot of parks of our size, and one just recently close to us, right up the street on Warren, Ohio, they actively are going through a parks plan right now, a parks master plan right now, in which they have included an outside entity to assist in that plan. The amount that I provided, again, was just what's on the higher end of an amount, so I can have enough room to share as to what may or may not need. It may not even go up to that amount. Like earlier, as we were dialoguing, we have a lot of information already that we could provide to have that plan done, and that in my professional opinion, we wouldn't even get to that maximum amount of 250. That is on a higher end based on our community size of Northeast Ohio area. However, an alternate plan to that would be to be transparent with our community, and us doing it on our own and doing it ourselves internally. It could definitely happen, but that communication has to happen. I mean, even for today, it was the first time I'm hearing that plans are here and plans are there to include the Parks Department and having additional staff and us working together to actually facilitate and initiate that. It possibly could happen, and we would only have to bring in those experts on particular projects at a higher level. At that point, then we would maybe have to bring them in at that point, and utilizing some of our partners, like you stated, that we currently work with already. That too would be great. But as the Parks Director and having the minimum staff, as you all know, as you stated, yeah, if I had additional people with that particular expertise that could assist in developing a full plan, it definitely is something that could be done internally, but those pieces would have to be there in order to execute that to be an effective plan that can also be presented not only to our community, but also utilized when applying for federal grant or local grant or Northeast Ohio, with other type of grants that are available.
okay, so I would try to kind of moving forward point here. So we have a lot of the council people have a plan in place with costs associated with it. We can base that around what we have here as what's basic to include in a park. And I think some of us are ready to go sooner than others, and that's kind of the holdup of not wanting to go through the whole exercise again of a plan of this, having a master plan, especially because, like you said, Dawn, we already have portions of it done with the analysis YSU did, some of the stuff that we're working on as council people. I think council people have taken significant initiative here on the park side of things, and so we can help you along, Dawn, and we can commit to that so that you're not alone doing this in the moving forward and executing on the execution side of some of this stuff. I think perhaps where a plan would come into use, a master plan, like you mentioned, Dawn, would be for the future. Maybe that portion is what we go out and have done. What does the future look like? What does the up maintenance look like? And then that would be useful as well for you to apply for grants in the future. But perhaps in the right here and now, it sounds like to me that we would be more comfortable going back to allocating a specific amount of money out of ARP to the parks in general, and then taking all of our individual plans and being able to start to put those into action based off of the analysis we already have done and the work that council has already put in with engaging the communities and pricing out with vendors, et cetera, et cetera. And that way we can get moving. What does that sound like to everybody? Or to anybody? Would we rather see legislation that says, you know, we want to allocate $9.4 million to the Parks Department for improvements and renovations in neighborhood parks, and then we can start executing some plans. And every time somebody though wants to execute a plan, there are going to be significant costs. They'd be coming up with individual pieces of legislation anyway. So we'd be seeing them as the plans came through. Jimmy?
If you go by what Bosher and her saying what was minimum things that need to be at each in those playgrounds and parks, and the list that she seems to accumulate, it seems to me an assessment still, and I'm trying to steer away from plan, assessments still would be needed to determine what that is, you know, if you want to avoid these long kind of what we want to do with money. You're talking about setting aside money to go into it, but it don't say which of us is getting what, you know, and if it's not going to deal with the minimum, and it's never going to be because there's some big numbers, you know, made them all. So it's still going to come down to whose parks is going to be taken care of or service, and how do we select those parks, to me, you know.
Well, I think that's the point of this. All the parks would get at least what's listed here for this $2.4 million. They get at least what's listed here, all of the playground parks that we have in the city. And if, say, Jimmy, you wanted, so you're getting grills, benches, and garbage cans, right? You're getting everything. Say you wanted fancier benches, then you would use your $2 million to pay for a couple fancier benches, because you didn't just want the basic benches. But you would get the basic benches out of this ARP allocation. Everybody would get this. This is your basic blueprint of a park. And then where there were outlier parks, such as McKelvey Lake or Bortz, or those are outlier parks, they would get additional monies out of this total 9.4 million because they're outliers. They're not a basic park. So everyone would get equitable. That was I think the point of what Basha was trying to do here, what she said earlier. This would be equitable at the bottom level, and then it would be up to the council person's decision based on conversations with their residents and things like that to upgrade or elevate the park in there.
And I'm sorry, Chairwoman, maybe if Mike could scroll down a little bit. I don't know if he's still with us. to even show Jimmy, for example, some of these other parks that need the significant improvement. So other than, for example, in your ward, Jimmy, other than your playgrounds that would be done, we know that Lincoln Park and McKelvey Lake need substantial investments. They're not just playgrounds, they're green space. And that's why I suggested $1 million be allocated to that. And then we would still have to, you know, working with you, working with, you know, economic development and Dawn, you guys can come together and see how it would be best used to do those improvements to make sure that they have, you know, a long time, you know, substantial, you know, investment. And I don't know if those other ones, which other ones are yours, but that's why I categorize them like that.
No, through the chair, thank you.
So through the chair, quick question for Basha. So Basha, like, how did you put this put together what you put together? Is this like, did you do like some type of long-term study looking at our parks, or did you just base this off of like common sense stuff, like just off the top of your head? Because the document is good. And the point I'm just trying to make is, if you just came up with this just from sitting back and looking at everything, then I think that's something each one of us can do. And I don't think any 7 of us would be particularly greedy or bullish when it comes to deciding what we need to do in our parks. Like I got one little playground. I'm not fighting y'all over, you know, trying to get $2 million on Falls on the south side. What I'm gonna do with $2 million over there? I need a couple 100,000, you know. So did you come up with this like just a common sense solution to the issue, or did you do some type of long-term analysis with this?
A little bit of combination of both. I'm not a parks expert, but just from the amount of data we all have individually and the analysis that we received from the university that bases everything on demographic and the need. And then additionally, knowing what the cost is from researching what cost is of certain equipment, they are averages. So maybe so say even for the 200,000 for the playgrounds, maybe one playground will need 220,000, but a different one will only need 150. But that is what the average is. And kind of looking to see what the standard, typically there is some type of standard of what constitute as a playground. This would make it equitable. So, I mean, I guess in short, no, I didn't just take it out of, you know, the sky, these ideas. It comes from all of the data and analysis we already had. It was just taking the time to sit down, looking over it, organizing it, and putting it down on paper.
And Basha, the 9.4 million at the top, that's based off of the listening tours we had and the data that we got back from that, and then the percentage of ARP money that should be spent on parks based off of you know, what we heard from residents during the listening tour.
Correct.
Okay. Dawn, is your hand up, or are you still dealing with the thing? Okay, go ahead, Dawn.
Yes, that data analysis document, it is a large document, but if you have the opportunity to just pull out like information from your ward, you can definitely grasp a lot of what is needed, and even the census information that is in there, what that demographics at least gives you a large tool of what that demographics is and what you may or may not need to improve at your park, what the age actually is of the individual who utilizes the parks is needed when it comes to making even your own park improvement plans that you have and plan to share with me at some time. It does assist in creating the document, your own document for your ward. And doing it ourselves, you know, I'm all for that. My challenge too, like you said, would be what I could not provide as a director, and even with the individuals that we have in our department, is how that would actually be executed, and what action items would be needed to execute where to start, and also do not have the team expertise as to writing what the maintenance plan would be, what the safety plan would be, and then what that plan would be for long-term care and a future development. That I do not have. While I could provide and assist someone to what that does look like based on my work experience, I must be honest to say that I can see that part falling by the wayside if I did not have that internal support to execute everything that we together, if we went that route, we would be putting together for the plans.
Anita?
Yes, through the chair. I think that we definitely need, obviously we need another meeting for the, like I said, for our parks and everything. And I think in addition, at that meeting, we would need someone like Chuck, who's used to handling these kind of contracts that we would need to, contractors and things that we would need to reach out to in order to get these things accomplished. But I just have to repeat that 250, it's $250,000 to do a plan. And yet there smaller cities, but they've done them for $10,000. And here we're talking about 250,000, which is literally based upon what Bosch said, it would be half the amount of money that would cost for the 5th ward for its playgrounds, plural. And I think that we have to look at, though, when Dawn talks about her shortage of personnel and so forth, if we do our part, what we would then need to do after we get everything narrowed down is to turn that over, all that information over, so that in a business, a company could put that into a format for us, a legible format, print it and everything else, like we do for everything else. That's what I think how we should be looking at this, which is we do our part and then turn it over to a professional who's going to put it into booklet and understandable form for us to distribute to our constituents. I think those are two different things. And maybe I'm wrong, Don, but to me, it sounds to me like it's two different things. One is preparing a plan, and the other one is putting it down onto paper and so forth. Is that what you're saying your shortage is at?
No, I'm to the chair. I'm saying that in order to execute those plans, we can definitely do that together. Where do we start first and all of that? However, when it comes further on to that, which would include the safety, the maintenance, the safety plan, a maintenance plan, as well as a future development plan, that is all included in a master plan, in which I do not have the capability to be able to provide that as a plan. Beyond the portion of us, we're going to start here first and all of that, and use our partners that we have been utilizing. But once those areas are up, the complexity of it starts right then. What's going to be future? What's going to be the maintenance plan of it? What's going to be the future development plan? Are we meeting the proactive needs of our community as our community changes? Those are the plans that one person cannot do, regardless of what size their city is.
To the chair.
That's what I would share.
Yeah, I think I understand that. I would be comfortable having a consultant create that part. Once we're done with this, once we have our, we've made our improvements, we've used the statistics we already have to make our improvements, work on our parks, then we ask an outside consultant to come in and say, okay, what do we look like 10 years from now? Can you put us in place so that we then can work towards those goals for the next 10 years, and you can use those goals and that part of the plan to apply for grants and kind of have a better calendar for maintenance and improvements and grant writing and those sorts of things. So that part makes sense to me, spending a little bit of money
Right.
at the end of this
Understood.
for that part of the plan.
Yes, through the chair. And that's what I was sharing, you know, what I provided from the very beginning when it comes to this particular item that we're discussing is what a maximum amount would be based on the area that we live in, Northeast Ohio, and I didn't say that that would be the actual cost. That's if this particular plan or individual did everything from top to bottom with us just sitting back and incorporating what they provide us proactively after they're done. Or so that's what that total is. Again, when this initially came through with ARP, it was bring to us what a plan, what your items, your action items would look like, what you're requesting, I should say, not action items. And that is exactly what I done, was providing an overall maximum capacity as we talk through it, and appreciative of how we could get around some of those fees. That's great. As long as the communication is there and we know how to execute it without leaving it strictly on a department as to where to go first. And we all work together. Yes, that is how it should be, you know, but it also needs the tangible resources internally in order to go further. So appreciate, you know, understanding the needs would be thereafter as we work together to include the Parks Department into what the now plans are so we can execute those now plans together. I know we definitely could do that. I do agree.
Yeah, I saw Nikki's hand up. Did you still have something? Sorry.
Through the chair, yeah, I'm sorry. I did raise my hand, but then I lowered it because Dawn said exactly what I was getting ready to say. When the $250,000 ask was presented to the committee, the ARP committee, we had some of the same questions, but that was prior to us understanding that the due diligence that council had already done. So this was based on blank slate, not understanding that council already was having the community meetings, already doing the surveys, already providing the data, you know, that was just discussed. So that was an up to amount that the ARP committee agreed to based on nothing being done, and understanding that this work would have to be done in each of the 7 wards. So that's why the amount Dawn presented to the committee was so high.
Okay, so now knowing a little bit better, this is to the administration, now knowing a little bit better of how far along we are as council people with these park plans, would the ARP committee be comfortable maybe taking the plan off the table, the $250,000 off the table, and presenting something that makes more sense now so we can start executing, and then at a later date bring a dollar figure back to make the future part of the plan?
Through the chair.
Through the chair, if I hear you
I'm sorry, go ahead,
correctly,
Nikki.
I'm sorry, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is now that council has done the legwork, you all will provide that information to Dawn to send back to the committee, and then we can look at that to say, okay, now we have all of this data, all of this is put together. Now we need someone to create the master plan out of what we have. Was that, am I hearing that right?
No, I don't think so, but let me try again, but I'll let Anita go first. Maybe she.
Well, through the chair, remember that what the ARP committee did was make a recommendation, knowing fully that council would, in the end, make a final determination. So what we could do is take back to that committee and say, give them a figure that we feel comfortable with, and let them know, and then get additional input. But in the end, it is strictly up to us, not that committee. And they are aware of that. They made a recommendation. We can accept the recommendation, reject it in total, or reduce that figure. Okay, so it's not like we have to have their okay. We don't want to diss people, but it's not required that we have their approval. If we want to bring this number of 250 down to a lower number, or do a set aside of say $50,000, and then do a drawdown, and then do a drawdown as these things come up that we need. If we need a consultant, you know, but we don't
Through
have to
the
keep
chair.
the 250.
Sorry.
Nikki?
I'm sorry, yes, through the chair. That's kind of where I was confused because we just made the recommendation based on a blank slate. So that's why I'm asking, are we bringing it back to the committee? I don't understand why we would bring it back to the ARP committee.
Okay, so we would just, so does this committee want to recommend then that the pieces of legislation just be voted down and we start again with, based off of this information, with new pieces of legislation that solve for what we're talking about today? At a smaller dollar figure for just the end portion of the plan, which is the future development and maintenance of the parks. That's the part of the plan that, you know, that I think I'm comfortable spending money on creating. And then a piece of legislation that says this is how much we're gonna spend on what Basha has laid out here to make sure our parks, as part of our parks plan.
To the chair, I don't understand why we would need to pay for a maintenance plan.
Thank you, Julius.
Through the chair,
Through the chair.
a maintenance, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I just to follow up with Julius, I don't want to, I'm just saying there's portions that I think we need to use a consultant for. Obviously, I think we've all decided we don't need a consultant for everything. I don't know if Don needs to go back and say to the consultant, here's the stuff we're willing to do. What does it cost for this portion? You know, and that's really, you know, because 250,000, I don't know how any of us have the knowledge to know how to get it down to, we all know the demographic data is done. A lot of the stuff's done. Bosch did a lot of the work. You know, what do we hand over to a consultant and what are we expecting? If Don thinks it's maintenance or whatever, you know, and that's a piece she needs them to come up with, or, you know, so I think you said defeat the piece and come back to us, get some new information, get a new proposal, and we can look at that. That's my 2 cents.
Dawn?
Yeah, well, again, I don't have, actually, when putting out the bids, that amount could be with anything. That is, that maximum amount doesn't have to be 250, but in doing the interviewing with the organization, or the company that going to place the bid, we can have that written up as what we need. The amount would then come from there, and maybe even some follow-up questions if it was done like a RFP proposal type thing. This is what we do need to have, and then they follow up questions to me, because a maintenance plan is more than having some nuts and bolts and screws to do some maintenance to the park. It does go beyond that. It also goes when it comes to standard compliance and what is required, and having that time data sheet as to the particular maintenance of not just parks and playground, but all of your green spaces, anything of our facilities when it comes to improvement of our capital improvements, and that maintenance, what that looks like. So it entails more, the word itself seems more like, because that's what we're used to, even myself prior to knowing more of what it was, you just think of maintenance, but it goes beyond that. And that is a large aspect that ties into the future development, because if we put those two together, we won't need as much maintenance, just more of like updates when it comes to future development. So again, I mean, to just have an actual plan of in the future, so we're going to need, when we get to that point, we will have, like you said, the documents during our interviewing process of those who do bid for this particular job, this is what we have. And so that amount would change to, I do believe, tremendous a lot, because we have a lot of our own information.
Through the chair, just direct reply to Don. When I think of maintenance, I think of it in terms as my military training. So I'm not thinking of just like nuts and bolts. I'm thinking of preventative maintenance. So how do we make this last as long as possible? When do we swap this out so we don't incur a problem moving forward? That's the type of stuff I'm thinking about. And if you're dealing with, you know, like DWA or Burke Park playground equipment, I think that's like kind of information they'll supply us with, especially if, I mean, I don't know who else have dealt with them as far as their playgrounds go, but that's information that kind of comes along with purchasing the equipment off of them putting a plan together. So I think if any of us are going to do business with, you know, park equipment companies that have been doing this for years, I think that's something that we ask of them going into the plan to do it, because it's their equipment. That's what they do. I think they can provide us with a lot of the information that we need in the process of utilizing them to do the parks. So
Anita's had her hand up for a while. I'm gonna let
Thank you.
her
Sure.
go.
Thank you. Don, I'm listening closely, but I just keep hearing a lot of things being tossed together under one thing, because we're talking about parks, and yet you're talking about the maintenance of green spaces. I mean, we're talking about playgrounds and parks, and then you're talking about the maintenance of green spaces and developing green spaces for economic development. Those things are not all to, you know, I'm looking like, what do we need to do the stuff that we need to get done? Because the economic development side of it, it's like, we need to get the playgrounds done. That's what we need to get done. We need to get our playgrounds done. You want to go do economic development, go do it, but get the playgrounds done. You're talking about a maintenance plan. I so totally agree with Julius. It's like maintenance, to do a maintenance plan through a company, it's like, then why don't we require Chuck to give us a plan, and we require Harry to give us a plan for maintaining our pipes and things. It's like, they don't go out and do outsourcing. They get the whole thing together. Once they get the product, within the product, it gives us the plan. Just like Julia said, when we bought the service to have the pipes relined with that material to extend its life, they gave us the plan. We didn't go up there and go to a separate consultant, you know, and I'm really trying to understand why we're bringing in so many things under this umbrella of the playgrounds. I mean, I'm just it's just so much mixing instead of staying laser focused on what we want to get done, which is our playgrounds. Am I right, Julius? Am I following you correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on. And just to add to your point, I think we're neglecting to identify a huge asset that we have in the city. I mean, Bob Burke still works for the city, and he tried to do this stuff years ago. So it's like you got a historic, knowledgeable asset in the health department. It's like, we ain't got to reinvent the wheel.
Through the chair, or?
Go ahead, Dawn.
Okay, yeah, and those are all valuable assets, as well as myself. I work with Bob Burke quite frequently, even prior to coming back home to Youngstown. And with that said, though, when we were talking about the maintenance plan, we were talking about a safety plan. What we were talking about was me responding to questions that were great questions regarding what a master plan is. Quite frankly, though, when it comes to a plan for a maintenance plan, our DWAs, our play cores, our greenwoods, those are all park that provides park equipment. What they do provide you is a plan of how to make sure that your equipment lasts longer based on the environment of ours, such as the weather and everything. And what they do not do is provide you what a long-term future plan would be. But this is what could work if you do X, Y, and Z, and which we will follow, which we have been following based on even the older equipment that we do have. At no ways what I was trying trying to state that I, as a park director, do not know exactly what an actual plan does include or is pushing everything together. And to go do economic development and also to include housing, you're right, they all do go together, and I will do that because they go together. But I also know that our key goal is to take our parks and make them more beautiful as far as even the usage of them, as far as equity and benefits of accessing them. You're right, we can definitely stay on that goal, but in this whole conversation, we also have been talking about what would a future master plan look like after we have done our part. So I simply was providing information based on that, not to one, confuse us as a whole, or even to state that one department could probably assist better than I could do my own job. I believe we all work well together, and when assistance is needed, they are there for me as well as I am there for them. When it comes to utilizing those who are also in my field, I also utilize that as well, because it's a learning process every day when it comes to working in recreation, providing park environments, and providing green spaces, in which all three of them are different, but they all are underneath Parks and Recreation for this community. So I at no point thinks that a master plan could be adjusted or could not created right now, and we could not handle making our own maintenance plans when it comes to what we currently need. What I was simply stating was, if we were to go with a full master plan, that includes them doing all the things that would include the maintenance and all of that. But if that is not the route that would suit that where we would go, then we simply would not need that. And again, future developments, our plans, we will continue to do what we've been doing and do that, do a great job at that, knowing what our community needs. As long as we know what they want and participating with them, we can continue to do that.
Okay, thank you. We're coming up on 2 hours here under this meeting. And so I think we've come to a point where we want to defeat the legislation because we don't need it in its entirety, is I think what we decided, what we talked through today, because we've already done a majority of that legwork, and then maybe take another look at this at a committee of the whole, like Councilwoman Davis suggested, to come up with a piece of legislation that makes more sense now that we all sort of know how far along each of us are in our own plans. And in the meantime, make sure we update Dawn on what we're working on and who we're working on it with, so that we can start to execute. Because I think we all want to get to the execution point now. And that's because we've already done the first 2 parts of the legwork. Now we're at execution. And then as we're executing, perhaps Dawn will have a better idea of what it is she needs from a plan perspective, from a planning perspective, and can come back to us with a number or a figure or an RFP based off of that. Does that sound reasonable to the committee, to everybody here? I see Mike shaking his head. Anita?
I'm good. I just want to make sure that but I would like to see us also take the other piece forward for passage. But this piece here, I think, I don't know who it was, Jules or Mike, saying to vote it down as it's presently written. That'd be my take on it.
Okay, so you want to take the 22-166 forward for approval so that Dawn can have some money to kind of make the repairs on the things that we know aren't changing in our own wards, parks, master plans. And then we'll recommend defeating 22-167. And then our third ask will be for a committee of the whole meeting to prepare legislation based off of Basha's paperwork here so that we can start to execute.
To the chair,
Yes, Anita?
I'm not sure who's all here, but it's it's just my opinion. I think we should have another meeting of the whole to address this whole thing right here. So
Yeah.
since our park committee chairperson is not here to get her input as well, and then go forward, and after that meeting, prepare the legislation. I mean, that's just money. I mean, I'm not hard on it either way. Okay. But I'd like for us to have time to actually just focus on just this piece right here and start digging down into the weeds on it.
Yes, that is what I poorly articulated, I suppose.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Yeah. I want to do it quickly because
Yes.
execution, I know, is on top of all of our minds. Julia said his plan is done. Anita, I know you've been working, you know, we want to get in motion. We've already started. So,
I have a September deadline.
Huh?
I want to have it done by September.
Yeah. And right. Basha said she was planning on having hers done this summer. So we're already behind the 8 ball in terms of our own personal plans that we've created for our parks. So we need to go on that execution. Does that, I know Anita and Mike, you're both on the ARP committee. Are you comfortable with that, or is there anything you need for that committee?
I think I'm good. Are you okay, Anita?
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. Dawn, anything else? Are you comfortable with us going in that direction based off today's conversation?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank
Then Anita, do you want to make the motion?
What's that ordinance number for passage?
I just closed it.
You want me to make them?
22.
Go ahead.
I could make the
Basha.
motion.
Oh,
Okay,
Basha, you're there. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to forward ordinance 22-166 to the council floor for consideration of passage.
Second.
And I'd like to make a motion to forward ordinance 22-167 to council floor with a yes vote to defeat.
Second.
Okay, so then we
And
don't have anything under unfinished business. And to schedule the next meeting, I'm going to request a committee of the whole meeting specifically to discuss the parks improvement proposal summary presented today from Councilman Adams Act. Is that correct? And
Yes.
then I'll take a motion if there's nothing else.
I have a question for Valencia.
Anita, go ahead.
Do we have a deadline on the Zoom meetings when we can, how much longer we can have them via Zoom?
June 30th was the last day, unless they extend it, but right now it's June 30th.
To the members present, do you think we can get one in before June 30th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, to the chair, then I would like for us to, with a date to be determined, to set a date for a committee of the whole prior to June the 30th, and that it be done as a Zoom meeting.
Okay. Okay, that's everything for today. Thank you, everyone.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
And